Welcome back to another episode of Dentistry's Growing with Grace podcast. Join Grace and her guest of the week as they discuss lessons learned in the industry and explore unique insights into ethical growth. Hello and welcome back to Dentistry's Growing with Grace. I am so excited to have Dr. Thomas Graf here with me today. Dr. Graf, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So today we're going to be talking, and really I'm just going to be asking you questions about your experience, what you did to prepare for even graduating from dental school, and then a little bit about your path and how you came to be where you're at right now. So tell us a little bit about you and what inspired you to want to share in this way with our audience.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just grew up in a small town in Southern Ohio, and decided to go against the course and go into dentistry. Didn't really have any family in dentistry, but I really loved business. My dad was a business owner, and like the mix of business and patient interaction. So when in dentistry, I actually studied business in my undergrad career at Ohio State, and then did dental school at Ohio State. And so when I was in dental school, I always like to tell people, like, I was never the smartest person in school, but I always could work the hardest. That's just how I got by. That's probably the reason that I got in dental school. But anyway, I made up my mind when I was in dental school that I wanted to pursue ownership immediately after. I think a lot of people looked at me like I had three heads whenever I said that. But I didn't care, because when it comes to running a business, I knew that, I may not have all the answers, but I could work to find them. And it didn't scare me, because I wanted to invest in myself. So I know I could do that.
And I want to talk to that too, because a lot of people think that they need X amount of years in business before they start their business. I started mine at 24, and my family thought I was crazy when I told them I was going to start a dental marketing company. They were like, none of us are dentists. You have very little real life. You have 2 years of real life experience. Like, are you out of your, they're like, okay, Gracie, good luck. But you could tell they thought I was crazy. So I can totally relate to that. And I will say, for me anyways, it was a huge blessing that I started when I did, because I wasn't married and I didn't have kids and I had nothing but time. And that really played in my favor.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
Yeah. And I think the sooner you start too, you kind of have nothing to lose. You're going to figure it out, whether you figure it out, like you're just going through fire, or you're just jumping in, or you're going to figure it out by observing for 5 or 10 years. You're going to figure it out. So tell me a little bit about that path. When did you graduate, and did you jump right into ownership, or were there some obstacles in that process?
Yeah. So, and just another thing to hit on, like you said, I was a big listener of podcasts and reader of business books, and that was just what I done in my spare time. And I heard from multiple podcasts of, you're never going to feel 100% ready to start a business. There's never any point in your life that you'll feel 100% ready. But they said when you feel about 70% ready, you should do it. And I was probably like 25% ready looking back, but I had the desire to go along with it, I guess. But
is that hindsight speaking?
Yeah, probably a little hindsight. I thought I knew more than what I did.
I think everyone who starts a business, myself included, thinks that it's going to be 10 times easier than it actually is.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear, and that's not to scare anybody. I think you should do it anyways. It's just know going into it, it's going to be harder than you think.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's about. Like, figuring out a tough situation that you know nothing about and getting the answer.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, but to answer your question, I I kind of made up my mind my second year in dental school that, you know what, I'm doing it. Like it's all or nothing. It's not something I can beat around the bush. I thought, like, everybody's telling me, you should go the corporate route first, and then you'll learn a lot there, and then go into ownership. And some people are like, well, go find a good private practice. And I just never liked that mentality. And so I decided my second year that's what we were going to do. And so immediately I during my second year, I started reaching out to dentists. And I think it was the right before I started my third year, I sent mailers to all the local dentists in my area. I couldn't afford to pay somebody. I was married. Fortunately, my wife was my sugar mama, and she was a hygienist. Um, so I was married. I couldn't afford to pay somebody to do these things. So I literally, on my days off, I would spend making flyers and doing demographic reports in my hometown. Um,
So,
and
so I just want to speak to this because you actually took action. Like you decided you wanted to be an owner, and so you decided, okay, well, if I want to be an owner, I'm going to have to find a practice. That was the first logical step. Um, this reminds me, I was recently like really wanting to purchase a lake house with my husband, and we had been looking and looking, on the MLS and on Zillow and Realtor.com, and like nothing was there. And we were at the point where we were like, oh well, why don't we just send in a letter to all the people with houses on the lake and see if they're, we ended up getting a house before it hit the market and being able to skip just by being proactive and like going after what you want instead of sitting back and waiting for it to come to you or for someone to tell you how to do it. Just that mindset alone, that action oriented mindset is everything. So
yeah, and I think giving a lot of credit to podcasts like yours, because dental podcasts, they go against the grain. All professors are like, no, you can't do that. That's not the route you take. But these podcasts really challenge you, and that's where I got the idea. Was to make flyers, and you know like I said, I made up my mind, and that was how it was going to be. And so didn't really know what I was doing. Didn't even, looking back now, didn't really even know the best questions to ask when these doctors reached out to me. But I just knew I wanted it, and knew I wanted to acquire a practice, and what we did. Yeah, and so I ended up sending the flyers to, goodness, I want to say it was 32 dentists, and that was like a 25-mile radius from my hometown, small town. And I got 11 responses,
wow.
which was awesome. One of the things about my town after doing the demographics was we had um, we had 18 dentists within a 15-mile radius, and 16 of them were over the age of 65. So I was like, I know the demographics are dying late. It didn't really concern me too much because I just wanted to move home anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's why I had a lot of responses, because a lot of doctors just wanted that retirement plan, and it was really difficult to get young dentists to come and take over the practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that was in 2010. And I met with all 11 of them, and to be quite honest with you, probably 10 of them were like I pretty much knew instantly that I couldn't do that. Just older practices, didn't didn't really. I think I just had a biased perspective that no dental office was going to meet my my wants. um,
So then you started realizing and creating this vision, right? That what you wanted to create and your own um everything you probably started to recognize that you had some pretty strong preferences around how you were going to practice, which is interesting. How much like postgraduate clinical experience did you have at that point?
at that point, I was still in school.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
And so one of the things that I really should mention was, um, I'm like, I want to work harder than everybody else. Always been like that. And so I told myself, you know what? I'm going to finish dental school in 3 years. And I wasn't going to graduate in 3 years, but I was going to be done. Like, I'm done. I can do whatever I want this last year. And that was going to be the focus on buying. And, fortunately, I did that. I worked really hard. And I finished my graduate my dental requirements in 11 months instead of 24. And so I spent those last, 13 months looking into ownership and really learning a lot about it. And because I had finished my graduate, my dental school requirements early, they allowed me to go into the residency program to see a lot of the more difficult patients and get a lot more clinical experience. And my goal was the same the whole time I was in dental school. Like when I get out, I want to be into ownership. And how was I going to do that? How could I prove to the banks that that's something I could do? And getting as much experience as I possibly could when I was in dental school, was how I felt like I could do that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So, of the practices that you realize that, okay, these are not really a fit. I wrote this letter, I met with these people, and either this practice isn't going to be something that I can turn into my own, or they're asking way more than this thing is worth, or, whatever the situation may be. What was your next move?
yeah, yeah, and so a lot of them, like I told myself, I was gonna base very little off of the financials until I would like the practice. Because to me, the numbers can say one thing, but if you go to work every day and you don't like the shag carpet on the floor, then yeah, that's the problem. But so the 10 offices that I really just left knowing this wasn't for me, I just respectfully emailed them and said, I'm going to think about it, but I think I'm looking for a little bit different style practice. Be more than happy to, if you're looking for an associate, to refer anybody to you as my classmates. Um, but then there was one that really stood out. Um, he grew up. His office is about 15 minutes from where I grew up, which, looking back now, I didn't realize how big an issue that probably would have been for me. Um, because there's something about my town that I wanted to practice in and marketing with that. But so I met with him a handful of times, and he didn't want to sell me his practice. He's 60 years old at the time, and he wanted to practice for another 10 years. And so the conversation went from buying his practice to a partnership, and really wasn't my intention to go that route, but his numbers spoke for themselves. I mean, he had better practice numbers than I've ever seen as a single doctor. Granted, I've only looked at 10 other practices, but yeah, but I did do a lot of research, and like he was very, very profitable practice. He worked hard, and he enjoyed what he done. And really his staff was far and away the best staff I've ever seen. I mean, they knew everything. He had systemized things so well that and I jokingly say this, but it's the truth. He probably only spent like 30 seconds talking to his new patients. And then they would be right back in the chair with 3 crowns scheduled the next week. It was impressive.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And so, he had the practice that was beautiful. He had the numbers that were just, I mean, they make you raise your eyebrows. But looking back now, he is so different. He was so different than I was. I I want to spend 10 minutes talking to my patients because I just enjoy that aspect of dentistry, and he wants to do another crown. And there's nothing wrong with that. His numbers reflect that.
Uh, I want to speak to this really quick because what you said is so profound. I think all too often we hear podcasts, we go to, we have speaking engagements and things, and people want to tell you, here's the roadmap to success. You do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z, and then you're successful. And that you can flush that from my perspective. You can just throw it away, because there are so many right ways. There are a lot of wrong ways to do things too, but there are so many right ways. And it's more about gaining your confidence to make good decisions, and to kind of pave your own path based on what's going to work for you. So the fact that you just said, he did it this way, and that way wasn't necessarily for me, but there was nothing wrong with his way. It was still very impressive, very, very awesome. I think in dentistry, like, too often we're going, this is right and this is wrong. This is bad. This is good. Um, and we need to think more like the way that you're thinking about these things, is that it's great, like, great for him. It wasn't for me,
Yeah.
so.
Well, let me also say that that wasn't my process as I was going through it. I was looking at his numbers and like, as a dentist or as a dental student who has $300,000 of debt, and I was like, let me add these up. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Like, I'll buy into this practice. Um, and I guess I'm kind of foreshadowing a little bit, but I didn't see the problems at the time. I saw these numbers are awesome. I can deal with this practice. His staff's great. Where do I sign? Um, and so, at that time, we were going back and forth, and every break, I would come home and I usually meet with him and we discuss what the partnership looked like. And one thing that I really liked about it was that I didn't know all the answers. I didn't have to know all the answers. He would be a good mentor in that aspect. Um, and and so what he wasn't good at was, I think, his website. His son was like in college, and his website had a picture of his son, and he looked like he was 4 years old on the website. And so I was like, let me handle the marketing, because like, I went to undergraduate for marketing. I love that stuff. Like, let's rebrand, do all this stuff. And so I spent about 6 months with my wife as a hygienist. We just started creating the marketing plan. So I had in that 6 month period, I had created a new brand, a pretty awful logo, but we had something to work with. Something just to like go to a company and like, hey, create us a logo.
Was it a tooth?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Okay. Well, then I'll allow it.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
I'm a big advocate of that. Like,
good.
Let's talk about, it's like the opposite of what you're going for as a dentist. Like, don't put an extracted tooth on your foot.
Thank you. I've been saying this for a decade.
That's what we're trying to prevent, right?
Yep.
So actually, it was funny because he was very adamant about having a tooth. And I was like,
of course.
Don't see this from my perspective. But so I had taught myself how to create a website because everything, all his decisions had to have a end revenue. Like, if we're going to do a new website, what's the projection revenue? And I'm like, I get that. That's very business oriented, but I'm like, a new website brings new patients. Yeah, like, I guess I'm not going to be able to calculate.
There's a lack of understanding between branding initiatives, reputation building, and direct call to action marketing. There's a difference. And so almost every time I talk to someone, I have to say, and I said this today already, the website itself isn't going to like grow legs and walk around and bring in new patients for you. But it's just like when you walked into those practices that had the shag carpet and you didn't want anything to do with it. It's the same thing to a patient when they see like a super dated website. They're thinking they're judging you. And so it'll work against you if you don't have it, and it'll work as a strong foundation and a branding piece if you do have it in place. Sorry, I can't hold back talking about websites because that's where I live. But
I agree 100%, and that's how I handle it. And so again, broke dental student. He didn't. I was trying to get him on board to like hire a website company, and like I ended up getting quotes for them. And but I was like, you know what? I don't think he's going to go for this. So I'm just going to create it. So I taught myself how to make a website and I spent, oh my gosh, I spent way too much time doing it.
And then there's the maintenance of it and everything that comes along with that. People don't realize it.
No, I didn't realize that at the time. But so I made it, and I actually made two because I was like, I'm gonna impress him. Like I'm gonna get a website, and then he's gonna say I don't like it, and then I'm gonna say, oh, I got another one.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and so I made them, and then my wife and I had 3 months worth of social media planned out, like literally to what we were gonna say, the picture that we were gonna post, the goal that we were gonna go for. I mean, it was really detailed.
Yeah.
And so here we are. We verbally agreed on the buy-in price. We have been working with an attorney for 6 months, and everything was kind of rainbows and butterflies at the time. And I'm about a month from graduating. Just really excited. I had a 6-month-old at the time. My wife and I had purchased a home in our hometown that was pending the bank loan.
Oh man.
I had a job.
Why do
Um,
I feel like bad news is coming in this story? Just all feels too good to be true.
yeah, it was great. And as I got about a month from graduating, things started to change in terms of like he was he didn't agree to hardly anything that I was suggesting. Um,
I just want to say here, for someone who's listening, who's been a long time owner, I've been the only owner of my company. I can't even imagine how challenging it would be to start to let go, especially when you've built something that is so efficient and you've made such great decisions for yourself. When you start to let go of the power, and it's not even power, it's just like this has always been your baby. And now you've got to like co-parent, with this young guy. It's got to be very, very challenging. So, just kind of speaking to both audiences here, that you've got to be really ready to let go at some level to bring someone in.
yeah, and I think that is a great point because I was trying, and I did take that into consideration because I knew like he built this practice from nothing, and so I didn't want to go in there and just change his logo and change it. He agreed to rebrand it, but because his dental office was his name, he had to rename it. But I didn't plan on changing anything for the clinical aspect of it. He doesn't do any surgery or endo, and I love surgery. So it was like such a win-win on his side of it, and I'm coming in trying to say, let's do this for social media, but try not to overwhelm him. But he was on board, and just about a month before I graduated, I just began to start things started to kind of not be so perfect. He had agreed. I had started taking an implant course when I was in school. So one of the things that we agreed on with the attorneys was that he would pay for that course, and uh, I would pay for a portion of it when I bought in. Um, and so I started taking it, and it was great. Um, and then it was, well, I don't want you to buy in right away. You can buy in 3 months. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? That's not what we agreed on. But I met him in the middle because I was like, I get it. Like, I understand. Like, it's tough. Like, you gotta, a little bit of you's gotta kind of weather the storm to see if I'm
So, were you going to buy in as like a 50-50 partner, or what was going to be the plan there?
yeah, yeah. So it was going to be a owner financing buy-in. So
Okay.
yeah,
So imagine how difficult that would have been on every decision, because I see that this didn't work out long term, and probably by the grace of God for both of you. But even though you got two good people, you got two good ethical dentists, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fit for a business partnership, which is a marriage. People don't realize that you're getting married to someone essentially, like not in the state, not in the eyes of God, but in the eyes of what's right and lawful. You're bound to this person, and so if you have different ideals, different decision-making processes, different visions for the practice, it's going to be a very big challenge to move forward unless you get that perfect buyer or seller, I'm sorry, seller that's truly ready to let go and just do dentistry. And that's really what I think the person buying in needs to assess is this person really ready to relinquish control, and how do we make decisions together? Is it I'm the seniority here, so I'm going to have the final say and it's going to be my decision, or are we truly partners? And it's kind of like in a marriage. It's like, do you both have a voice in the relationship? Do you both have power? And is there a foundation in that relationship of trust and friendship? And I feel like those are important things that we don't always think about in business. We're looking at those numbers too much sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight 2020.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't, you don't think about that, when you're young and you haven't gone through it before. But he had such different viewpoints to me, and we did discuss that with the attorneys. It was like, okay, what happens when I want to buy the service machine and you don't? And that was kind of where we started going like that. We started working away from each other because he wanted all the decisions, and I was like, I understand that you want those decisions, and I'm willing to like work with you. Like you can have the
He
decision.
needed an associate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to is he needed an associate, um, and and that's what he wanted, and yeah, that's ultimately what he offered me.
And you wanted ownership and he wanted an associate. But you both saw such a great opportunity. You both compromised instead of waiting for that perfect like fit situation. And so what happened next? This partnership obviously dissolved at some level.
Yeah, yeah. And so, over the next month, we were still like figuring it out. And I was so confident because I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this work. Like, I do understand he's built this. And so, I was willing and I agreed. I ended up agreeing to do a buy in at 6 months. And so that was, that was the day before that I graduated, where I sent him that email and was like, look, you're changing things. This is not what we agreed upon. Like if you would have told me some of these things, a year ago, I probably would have shook your hand and looked for another office. And that was the same day that he told me that he wasn't going to be able to pay for the implant course. And I think it was really at that point that I was like, all right, well, this is really not what I had in mind. Like, I think I realized that he was a different style practitioner than I was. He made decisions solely based off financial, um, off the finances, and I looked at him more for the long term.
Which and I just want to say, a lot of people find their way to make decisions and they stick to it and they're consistent and that works for them. I've worked with people like that, that just look at what's the return on this, and they end up holding themselves back, in my opinion, because if he was that great just with his clinical speed and his team's efficiency and what he was doing, oh my goodness, imagine what he could be doing had he played the long game, because he's playing the short game.
Yeah.
Especially on marketing, going, we do this, we get X, we do, that pinpointed. So what did you do next when you're sitting here? You've got this house, you've got this, pending mortgage or whatever. And what was your next move when you realized, okay, this isn't going anywhere?
Yeah. And so, I mean, the day before I graduated, I was still like confident that it would work. And I basically, emailed him and said, like, I can't agree to this. Like, I can meet you halfway at 6 months, buy-in, all that. And he responded the day that I graduated, and he said, a man's got to do what he thinks is best. And because I basically kind of said in my ultimatum, like, I've worked so hard for this, and like, I can't meet what you're wanting me to do right now. And he stuck to it. And so about 4 hours before I walked across the stage, I had no job. I had a house that was pending that job. Yeah. And I felt like I was the most prepared person to graduate dental school. And then I went from that to the opposite end of the spectrum. And so, I mean, I was devastated. Like that, that day was so hard for me because there were so many emotions. You know, you work for your whole life, but then, I mean, I'm getting chill on just talking about it, but then at the same time, it's like, what am I going to do? You know, I have a 6-month-old. You know, fortunately, my wife has a good job. The house that we put a mortgage on, you know, down payment, well, that may not happen anymore.
And then you realize that God had a different plan for you, a better plan, a better long-term plan for you.
Yeah.
So what was your next move?
Yeah, and so at that point, I graduated, and then the very next day, I literally reached out to every single person, every mentor that I had, and I said, "This is my situation. It sucks. You don't need to feel bad for me, but what can you help me? Like, do you know of anybody looking for a job?" I mean, I called like equipment reps, and they're like, "Who are you?" I was like, "Look, I just need an associate position. Like, this is where I want to be." And I ended up the next day. I got a job interview about an hour away from where I grew up, and so I mean, it was a blessing because we were able to keep our house down here, and you know, I had to drive a little bit, which wasn't ideal, but it was a private practice office that sold on Medicaid, and the biggest thing for me that I was looking for at that point was I want to go somewhere that can keep me busy. Like I don't care, you know, whatever. My collections is, my payment is what it is. You know, like I would negotiate that, but you know, 50% of collections is doesn't matter if you're only doing 2 fillings a day.
Totally. I,
Uh,
I just want to say how wise that is for anyone listening who is either a doctor looking to bring in an associate or an associate to buy in or whatever, or you're someone who's looking to find your first position, or maybe not your first position, just your next position. Being busy is so critically important. Being productive. I'm not even going to say busy, being productive, practicing your skill, mastering your craft. When you're just sitting around like, what am I going to do? That's when people don't last. And too many people say, well, Grace, I'm going to need to like amp up our marketing in July when we bring in this associate. I'm like, no, it's January. If you're bringing in the associate in July, we need to start marketing for that person now and planning for what we're going to do to double your new patient flow. Because it doesn't happen immediately. You've got to build that. So in this new position, were you kept productive?
yeah, and so again, if I had any advice for somebody graduating and just looking for an associate position, it's worry less about the percentages and worry so much more about, are you going to be able to go in and just be busy all day? I mean, like I looking back on this, they could have paid me 20% collections, and I probably would have taken the job because I went to that office. I was the only full time dentist. So, and the owner, he's a great guy, but he lived an hour away, so he was rarely there. So I got to make decisions, like ownership type day to day decisions. And, you know, I was so busy. It was like trial by fire, like sometimes too busy. I think my second week there, I did like a $15,000 case of anterior, of like crowns, and I was like, I laughed about it because I was like, I did more crowns on that day than all of dental school. And it was like, you know, I think I had to go get a beer afterward because I was so tired of it. You know, in the owner doctor, he coached me through that. He came down and he's like, I heard that you told this lady that she needed, you know, all these crowns. He's like, I want to come down and I want to mentor you for that case because I know you've never done that. And yeah, I mean, just looking back on it, it was the best, absolute best job I could have had out of school because number one, I just learned how to work 3 chairs, and I learned that I didn't like to work 3 chairs.
Yeah.
And number two, it was like I was able, and there was a heavy Medicaid patient, and I don't treat any patients differently, but when you have a patient that is not going to be paying for their molar endo, and they're not willing to travel to, 2 hours away to go get it done at a specialist office that takes their insurance, then the conversation is, you know what, I'll try this, I'll do this for you. But understand that I might be removing this tooth. And if you're willing to go through that and still have the tooth removed, then I'm willing to give it a shot. And I was able to do so much more dentistry because of that. And patients were appreciative.
There's so much wisdom in what you just said. People don't always know what they want until they know what they don't want. And so these experiences that we have in life, and even in creating our branding and our marketing and stuff, it's like, you don't have to tell me exactly what you want. You don't have to have it all figured out. Tell me what you don't want. Let's narrow it down, So how long were you with that practice?
Yeah. So after my second week there, I came home and I told my wife, I think so. Love the owner. He was just an awesome guy, a good mentor. But it was kind of like a practice that he didn't want to invest anything in. And so I think I was running 3 operative chairs and checking 2 hygienists, well, 2.5 hygienists, and we had like 4 hand pieces, like high-speed hand pieces. And one of them went down. And one day I came home and I called him and I was like, look, there's 4 hand pieces. Like, you got to get me something else. Like, I had to wait on, I had to reschedule the ground because of hand pieces. And he said no, which, I don't know how that decision came about, but I at
what?
This is week 2, and I called my wife and I said, I'm not meant to be an associate. I don't care what these numbers say. Like, I don't care how much this stuff costs. Like, if you can't look at that situation and say, yeah, I'll order you 5 more indies. Like,
I was not meant to be an employee. I've ran into my past employee who was a dentist. I marketed a practice for a couple years before I started my business. And he was like, just imagine if we never let go of you, how great we'd be doing. And, if we ever did anything to kind of push you away. And I was like, Doc, it's not what I was meant. It wasn't what I was built for. Yeah. I wasn't built to be an employee. It's just my personality. Yeah. And so I think it's awesome that you recognize that so quickly.
Yeah. And I can't even tell you how many times, like, I would want to fix the system. Like, I'm a podcast guy, you hear it and you're like, do this. And I would come home and my wife's like, you are an associate. Like, you don't need to be going in. Like, I literally went in and would take my impact drill and go fix all the things in mine. Because I was like, I can't work there.
I'm the same way. I took this marketing position in a dental practice before I started my company. And I had everyone sitting down for 2-hour training courses once a month, the entire team, like hygienists, doctors, managers of 2 location practice. And I was teaching them phone skills and return on investment and everything to make every aspect of the business that I could better. And I was 22, and they're looking at me like, aren't you supposed to be like playing with the website or something? Like, what are you doing? You can't turn it off when it's a part of who you are. You really can't turn it off.
Right. But I mean, at that point, I kind of switched my mentality of all right, I got to get back. I got to get into ownership. And what better way to do it than to try and take a broken practice or broken systems and just figure out what works? Because fortunately, if it didn't work, I wouldn't be responsible for the bill. And I found a lot of things worked and a lot of things didn't. But yeah, reworking with hygiene, protocol, same day treatment. And, I mean, it was just such a good experience. And they actually allowed me to take over the social media as well, because I had given them, I was like, look, I have this whole social media plan. Let me try it. Because I mean, as an associate, you get paid for what you do. And I was like, I could market a little better and make more money myself. And then, I took it, just like I said before, I took it as a learning experience. And I was like, if this doesn't work, then fortunately, I'm not out the money for it because it's been.
And really the underlying reason why you had all of this is just your work ethic. It's just because, like, from the beginning you said, like, I was going to be the hardest working guy in the room. I was going to be the hardest working, dentist. I was going to graduate. I was going to finish early and then have plenty of time to have XYZ lined up. So it's just that willingness to, like, stay late or get up early or do what you need to do to be the hardest working person. um, that is going to carry through with everything else that you do. um, and you're young and you have the energy to do that. And um, so how old are your kids now?
A 2-year-old and 6 month old.
So you
Yeah.
don't sleep either?
Oh no, those are
No.
on.
No, sleep is a joke. Okay, so how long were you an associate before you decided you were going to do your own thing? Like, before you actually made the move and you started your practice?
Um,
You knew 2 weeks in, but
right. I knew 2 weeks in, and then at the 2 week mark, I think I had set up. I was still revisiting some acquisitions. I got some good insight from a couple of people, and it was such disappointment as we were going to visit those practices. And we traveled an hour to visit one of them because supposedly there was a lot of surgery that this guy used to do and he doesn't do anymore. And so I was like super excited, and um, just I think my wife was like, I saw it on your face. You were so disappointed when you got in the car because I like wanted this so bad, and there was no discussion with my wife. It was like no way, like no way. So at that point, my wife just looked at me and she said, "Let's do a startup. Like, let's do it. Like, there's no practice that's ever going to meet your standards," which she was right.
she knows you.
She knows. She's like, you want things your way, and there's no practice you can ever buy. And we're like, yeah, you're right. So the next week, there was a practice for sale in my hometown. It had been, at that time, it had been vacant for about a year. And just the original dentist had Alzheimer's really bad, and it got sold to the guy, and he didn't want to travel. And it was a sad story because it was a really well-known practice. And I visited it, and I had actually visited it when I was in school, and I told my wife, I was like, "We need to see the revisit," and we did. And my wife went with me this time. It was an absolute dump. Like, I mean, as if somebody came in, and just ripped all the equipment out and scratched every wall when they were doing it. They left chairs that were useless. There was an old fridge that had.
It was like a dumpster, right? Like, it was just
an
like
absolute dumpster.
Yeah.
And I left, and my wife was with me, and I was like, "That was awesome! Like, let's buy it. How do we, like, what do we got to do to get it?" And my wife's like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
because it was finally something you didn't feel bad about tearing down.
Right, because I told her, because like I walked through that, and like I had the vision. Like, I didn't see things the way they were. I saw what I could create. And I ended up struggling to get a bank loan. Struggling. I talked to 17 banks, and I couldn't even get past the first, 60 seconds of conversation. Oh, how long have you been practicing? 3 months. Okay. Yep. Call us, 2 years from now. And I was like, like, this makes sense. I had a business plan. I have a marketing plan that I showed them.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me because you're going to make more. But they're not looking at all of the factors. They're not looking at all the business books you've read, your undergrad, business experience, your marketing plan. They don't know you personally. So they just put the numbers together and you look high risk.
Yeah. And I understand that. I mean, it was always, every bank was, how long have you been practicing? And, what was the other one? Do you have any kind of ownership experience within it? And the answer to that was no for everything. And then I was like, well, why do you guys need to know how long I've been practicing? What does it matter? And they're like, well, we have to know that that you can produce enough to pay your bills. And I was like, okay, well, at that point, I had 4 months of production. And I was like, well, I'm on track to produce $1.1 million in this practice right now. If that was your concern, and they would like entertain it, but then they couldn't get past well, you don't have anything. And so it was a struggle, but I reached out to local banks and all this, and I ended up getting a loan, because one bank heard me out, and I was like, just let me explain, like, let me show you the demographics of 7001, the marketing plan that I had, the positive cash flow. My wife and I had a condo that we owned when I was in school, and fortunately we had a tenant, and positive cash flow there. She had
So you purchased this, were there any active patients with the practice that you purchased, or was it essentially like a startup?
yeah. The answer, no, there was no active patients. And I made sure, because the dentist that I bought it from, there was some like shady things going on in that, number one. And number two, you know, it had been vacant for a year and a half. So I don't even know if the guy.
Someone, it was just one of those, they let it go. They just kind of let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just sold the equipment, and that was it. And yeah, that's a whole other story. But I was very adamant about, I'm not buying the practice. I didn't want the responsibility of the charts and all that stuff. I was like, I'm buying the real estate, and I'm not interested in practice. I don't even want your charts if you give them to me. And so that's what we did. And so I bought that. I bought the building, and I graduated in May of 2019. I bought the building in September 2019, the end of September. And I spent from September to September to basically do my startup. So it was originally going to be, let's put lipstick on it, let's redo the floors, repaint the walls, and let's open and do what we got to do, buy equipment, of course. And one of those things where my wife again was like, "You are going to hate going into this restaurant." It was ugly.
So you have this internal battle too going on between, should it be perfect or should it be done? There's a bit of perfectionism that kind of pulls at you a little bit. I think most of us battle that as business owners, especially because
yeah. I mean, it's a 2,250 square foot office. It had 4 offices, and so, and the sterilization was like in the middle of the practice. Oh, it made anybody cringe. And so it went from, okay, well, I convinced the bank to like help me buy this building, and now I got to convince them that instead of $125,000, I need like $500,000. So yeah, I ended up doing it. Like I ended up bringing another bank on board to give me the
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is all fairly recent. It's not like, you've had all of this time to like really super establish the whole business and everything. And then COVID hits.
Yeah.
So then, and I don't know exactly what your mandates were or whatever, but it doesn't really matter where you were in the world. There was some impact on your business when COVID hit. So tell me about how you navigated that, because now you have all these loans that are going to kick in, and they're going to obviously be saying, show me the money, like where's our payments. How did you navigate that?
Yeah. Man, COVID was honestly the saving grace to the entire situation. And I've never heard anybody say that, but that's the honest truth. So to make a long story short, I had ended up switching positions in January of 2020, switching offices. I took a hospital offered me a full surgical position that I love to do for a salary.
Nice.
And so when COVID happened, fortunately, I got paid my salary and I worked 8 hours a week.
Wow.
And just like what a blessing that was, because I was doing dentist for 8 hours a week, and I was probably swinging the hammer for the other 32 hours a week.
Yeah.
Because my goal when I opened was, if I'm going to do this, like I want to buy a cone beam. I love surgery. I love endo. I'm good at it. I've never used a cone beam, but I know that's a standard of care, and I know nobody around here has one. So my goal was to, I'm going to do $65,000 worth of work on my own, and I'm going to use that money and I'm going to buy a cone beam. And so my dad and I did the whole demo of the inside. We did all the work on the outside, and I would never do it again. But it almost killed me. But I'm COVID.
But you did what you had to do.
Yeah, you did what you had to do. And
you did what you had to do.
Again, COVID. I don't know how. I have no idea how I would have done everything if COVID, if I wasn't working only 8 hours a week for 3 months. And my dad was paid on salary and he was off. So
wow. The stars basically aligned for you in that situation.
Yeah, and not even just like swinging a hammer, but it was like, how on earth would I have done all the paperwork and applying for EINs and getting insurance credentialing, and just it was like, I don't know how it would happen. I just don't.
So you're now it's January 2021 right now, and your office is set up, you're operational. I'm assuming you've got your team in place, and you're finally up and running. Mm-hmm. Talk to us just a little bit, because we do talk about marketing and practice growth. Talk to us a little bit about what are you doing now today to attract new patients, aside from like what a marketing company would do. Like, what are you individually doing to connect with the community and bring in new patients?
Yeah. And so, obviously when you have a startup, there are, you pick and choose what you're going to spend things on. And, I did use a consultant throughout the process, and I would recommend that for sure. But I didn't always listen to the consultant, because I know sometimes I'm from a small town. So I said, I'm not going to spend, all of these funds on the marketing piece of it, sending direct mail. While I think that there's definitely a place for direct mail, I thought, I can do this if I just put my face in front of the camera. Like in as simple as using your phone and just Facebook Live in telling your story. And I can't even tell you how many people tell me, when they're coming in now, like, hey, we followed your story. And I mean, that was me. Like, look, we're tearing out the wall today. This is the plan. I can't wait till it's open. Like, we're finally scheduling patients. If you're looking for, a new office, here's what we're doing. So it was,
and that costs you nothing, but just, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to learn to get comfortable with what you have at your fingertips. And right now, as it stands today, Facebook Live still gets a lot of exposure, unpaid exposure. And so many people don't want to use it because, let's face it, the sound of our own voice on camera it's uncomfortable at first. You have to get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But it can make such a huge difference. So, that helped you.
Yeah. And so, like, my consulting company, their goal for me was to have 42 patients scheduled when I opened. And I looked at that and I'm like, come on, like 42 patients, like I can do it. And I had 315. And that was, one, I was taking advantage of being a small town, and two, like COVID. I mean,
and it's your town though. Let's talk let's talk to that too, because someone's going to call me and be like, Grace, I hired you to post on Facebook and I don't have 315 new patients. I'm like, you're not Dr. Graf. You didn't move to your hometown and you didn't do Facebook lives. So let's reel
Yeah,
it in and talk realistic stuff here. So that's awesome that you did that.
yeah,
And
and it's just telling your story, and like I gave people something to follow along with, and so I like people would approach me and be like, I felt like I was part of that, and you know, the goal was obviously to sell to get patients to come to our door when we open, but at the same time, it was like, it was really cool to see like the community response to it. And we had businesses like reaching out to us because they had seen our story and they were offering help. It was just, I mean, small town community. Like if
got to
you
connect.
do that, like, yeah, I mean, tell your story. People want to hear it. And, your story is probably pretty cool.
Absolutely. Tell your story in a way where you're being real, you're being vulnerable. People can get to know you and choose you. So this is my last question here. Um, what advice would you give to yourself if you could go back? If you could just give someone in your situation advice from, and they're finishing up school, what advice would you give them? What words of wisdom would you leave?
Yeah. Um, I think first and foremost, it's don't don't be afraid to believe in yourself with certain things. I had so many people tell me that that was a bad idea, and yeah, I think maybe sometimes that on paper it is a bad idea, but what's not on paper is work ethic. Um, you know, I think the second thing is you're never going to know all the answers anytime that pretty much for anything you do. Now I didn't know the first thing about insurance the day that I opened. Like I made so many mistakes on insurance, but you take them and you learn from them. And I do it 100 times over. Um, and I think outside of that, it's when you're looking for a dental home, focus less on the numbers. Definitely focus on the numbers, but focus on the other factors first, because it doesn't matter if you're paid 50% of collections. It doesn't matter if the dental office is collecting $1.5 million every year. If you can't see yourself in that position and going to work every day and enjoying it, then it doesn't matter what those numbers say.
That is the most important thing, I think, even when we have our own business, to make sure that we've created an environment that we enjoy and that we're working with people that we love and respect and building it to that point. It's a challenge. And every time you think you got to figure it out, you reach a new challenge. And so learn to embrace those challenging moments because they will push you forward. So thank you, Dr. Graf, for sharing with us today. And for our audience, thank you for being a part of our podcast, our video cast, our Facebook group. I hope you found some valuable information here, and I'm always available for you as a resource as well. You can reach me at grace@identitydental.com, or again, follow us along. Our podcast can be found at gracerizza.com. Thank you, Dr. Graf.
Yep. Thank you. Awesome.